Hello everyone, it's Iceland here. Welcome back to my channel if you are returning, and welcome if you are new. So we are the last weekend of 2024 already. I have no idea where the month of December went. In fact, I don't know where the month of December or November went. It just flew by so fast. But since we are the last weekend and I'm not quite at my reading goal this year, I thought I would do one final kind of push. And this weekend would be an awesome weekend to get in a oh, it's cold down here, a bit of a readathon. So that is what I'm doing, and this is going to be a vlog for that. I'm not really planning any specific time, like 24 hours or anything like that, but I am going to be taking the rest of tonight, which probably won't be very long because we're like almost 11 at night and I'm exhausted, so I'm going to bed. But definitely all of Saturday and all of Sunday to just have a nice cozy weekend to sit and get some reading done. I have a small kind of TBR list that I will be working on. I don't know if I'll get through them all this weekend, but I am hoping to try and get through them all before the new year. We'll see how that goes. So starting off, this is my current read. It is The Amber Crown by J.C. Bedford. I am 141 pages, I believe. Yeah, 141 pages in. So just about halfway through the book. And so far I'm kind of interested to see where it goes. It's told from 3 different perspectives, and now we're at a point where those stories are starting to combine. So that'll be, and it is a standalone, so like this is a complete story. There's not like a sequel or anything like that. So yeah, that is my current read, and definitely one I'm going to finish this weekend. Next one is going to be Villain by Chani Lynn Feener. I've read 3, I think. Yeah, 3, I think, books by this author this year already. She is very quickly becoming one of my favorite authors, and I think I actually own all, if not most, of her published sci-fi books. And yeah, the ones I've read I've really enjoyed, and I'm hoping I'm going to really like this one as well. She does write primarily dark romances, so if sci-fi, dark romance, space mafia stuff it sounds interesting to you, I do recommend checking her out, but do check her trigger warnings on her website, because these books are not going to be everyone's cup of tea. They deal with some pretty deep subjects, so yeah, just trigger warnings. Check them out if any of that sounds interesting. And then I have 3 more physical books here. I have The Failures by Benjamin Lyer, and this basically is a fantasy. Kind of, the synopsis kind of reminds me of, like, you know, old school tabletop RPGs where you go like dungeon delving, and, you know, fight monsters and get loot and that kind of stuff. That's kind of what this feels like to me. Kind of a throwback to that, but like in novel form. So I am interested in picking that one up. Back on the dark romance, I do have a gothic romance, Gothicana by Runex. And that is all I'm going to say about that one, because I don't really remember a whole lot about the synopsis and I don't want to read it on camera. And then another fantasy, this one I think is more of like a historical urban fantasy, I think, Oh, my dogs are barking. I better get upstairs. And that is Evocation by Saint Gibson. And if I manage to get through like all of those, I do have a couple kind of on the back burner that I can reach out for. But I'm not going to show them because they're not really a goal, right? So anyway, I'm going to shut this off. I'm going to go let my dogs in, and I will be back with the clip tomorrow with where I got to. All right, bye. Okay, so we are 9 a.m. I woke up about, I want to say 4 o'clock, I think, when I checked my phone, and I have basically just been awake, falling asleep, awake, falling asleep, waking back up. And in that time, I got to page 195 in the Amber Crown. I am finding it is suffering from some downtime here, that probably for the last, I don't know, 30 pages or so. And I don't know if it was just because I was like reading this in between catnapping or my mood or whatever, but I just felt like it was really starting to drag, and I was almost gonna DNF it. But now it's got to a point where it looks like it might be picking up. I'm gonna give it another maybe 50 pages and then decide if I'm gonna put it down and try it when I'm not in a marathon, or if I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna see how my mood with it is. I will say, for a book that's kind of a standalone novel, not really a whole super ton has happened. You know, we have followed some characters around. It's got a great character, what's the word? I can't think of the word right now, but getting into the characters' heads, understanding the characters, you know, getting invested in the characters and, you know, fleshing them out. So character building is, I guess is the word. It's got some great of that. I do get thrown a little bit out of the story when, so like, there are very fantasy words in here to like name places. There's a little bit of like made up language for things like, you know, body parts, clothing, things like that, or at least maybe like our languages, but inspiring that language. But then they throw you out words like, they reference the Jews, they reference the French, they reference Christ, but there's not really any kind of world building that explains where, like, that those areas are. Like, I'm not explaining this very well, but like, for example, they reference in here, one of the characters, the assassin character, references the madame of a friend who runs a whorehouse that he knows and he rooms in, as having a bad French accent. But the country France, or the French or like the equivalent of France that the word French could come from, is like never explained or never mentioned. It's very obviously inspired by, like, I'm gonna say, just because they have firearms in that, probably like 17th century Europe, or like Eastern Europe into like the Middle East. The nomadic tribe in here is very obviously very heavily inspired by, you know, some of the nomadic tribes of like the old nomadic tribes of Europe. But like they don't, so they throw in these very like our language words or our world words into this fantasy world. But the map, I don't understand the map that they've laid out. And there's not a map in the book, which would have been great, because like if there was a map in the book, I could look back and say, okay, he's calling her French, but you know what, they have a company there, or they have a country, you know, to the west of them, and maybe it's named something like the Franks. I mean, you could have French from that, you know. They don't really explain anything about, in this world, this fantasy world, how, you know, our world religions are involved, like when they mention the Jews and they mention Christ, you know, but yet these words are thrown in there to make you go, okay, like that's very like withdrawing. Like if you're going to go through all the effort of completely renaming countries and reorganizing a world map, even one heavily inspired by ours, you know, why are these other things getting thrown in there with no explanation? I guess it's like my only bitch, and I'm going to stop rambling and bitching now, but that's something that's kind of drawing me out of the story, and it's been very irritating. So it would have been nice to either have a little bit of world building around that. I'm not saying you need like a whole timeline of history, but at least some type of something simple, like a one-page world map that just lays out that, hey, this is equivalent to our world and similar enough in these ways, but then you, as you're reading, you would go, okay, well, obviously it's like parallel universe. It's not being set up as a completely separate fantasy world with some very odd parallels to ours. So I don't know if I explained that very well, but that's kind of where my brain has been going with this. But overall, it's been a really good story. The storylines are starting to come together. We were following 3 different perspectives, and now I think I'm beginning to see where the perspectives are going to start combining. So yeah, that's it. I'm going to get back into this one, and I will be back with the next update when hopefully it is either finished or I change books. Okay, and here's the part of the video where I'm going to ramble for a little bit. So feel free to skip this clip if you like. I finished The Amber Crown by J.C. Bedford. I'm going to get into this in a second. I have things to say. My next book will be Gothicana, The Gothic Romance by Rue Nix. So that'll be the next one I'm going to pick up when the camera gets turned off here. We are just like 10 after 11. And I finished The Amber Crown. I had to sit for a little while and try and come up with how I felt for this book. If I had to summarize it in a couple of words, I'm going to say wasted potential. There was so much potential in this book to be a political fantasy, which it touched on, but didn't really get much into. When you read the back, that is how you think it's going to go. The characters, it could have been a very good character-driven fantasy, and in a lot of ways it was. But again, it comes back to wasted potential. And I will come right out and say, and if you don't want spoilers, you know, skip ahead in the video, this author does not know how to handle trauma. Not afraid to put it in the book, but does not know how to handle it. There is so much that, honestly, if this was like in one of the dark genres, like dark fantasy or dark romance or dark sci-fi or anything like that, it would have had trigger warnings. But because this is just marketed as a regular fantasy, there's no trigger warnings. And like, can we normalize putting trigger warnings on books? Like, I don't mind reading a book with problematic features. I mean, hello, I read dark romances, and you don't get too much more problematic than that. some dark fantasies cross the line, but, you know, I need to be warned. And then I can decide if I'm in the right headspace to handle that kind of story. This has like no warnings, and the amount of just abuse and sexual assault, and yes, even a character with a very traumatic backstory with where he's a victim of pedophilia, is just all handled so poorly. And the ending, well, satisfactory. I mean, I did end up skipping some rather larger chunks of stuff that was either A, predictable, I knew how it was going to work out, so I didn't want to waste my time with it, or B, was beginning to piss me off. I mean, but I was invested enough, I still wanted to finish it. I wanted to know how the story ended, so that is a positive for the author. But I just think, if you're going to have a character-driven book, which at first I thought this was a political fantasy because that's kind of how it sets itself up in the synopsis and in the first couple of chapters, and then it goes very much into being very character-driven. But if you're going to have a character-driven book, your characters should not end the book in the same place as where they started it. We should see some character growth. We should see characters dealing with shit. And I just feel like particularly two of the main characters, Misra, the tribal healer, her ending probably pissed me off the most because there was so much buildup that was happening with her. Like her powers were starting to grow. Her powers were starting to change. She was, being almost set up like there was going to be like a big magical showdown, and then it didn't happen. No, she turns into a damsel in distress that goes through freaking torture and rape and trauma galore and has to be rescued, and then at the very end of her story, it's, I got my happily ever after, so nothing that I just went through matters. Like, excuse me? Excuse me? Like, she doesn't have any feelings about what she went through? Like, okay, whatever. The assassin, Lind, who was the victim of, pedophilia, as a child and a slave, as a child who, he escaped that by killing his master and, running away. He could have had some amazing representation of, a sex-repulsed asexual character, which there are snippets that show that because of his trauma, he is intimacy repulsed, and, but he also, doesn't really have feelings that way, which from the way it's kind of set up in the story, he'd been like that since he was young. So, even the trauma aside, he could have been a really good representation of that, and he just wasn't. Or it could have gone another way. Maybe he could have healed from that trauma. Not to say that you need to have sexual intimacy or anything. I mean, but, maybe he could have started to heal and maybe start to explore that side of it, of himself, of, finding maybe what he likes or doesn't like, or, but it just seems like any time his background is brought up, it's almost mocked, it's almost made fun of. The characters even, mention how, oh, it's okay if you like other men, and he's like, well, I don't really have feelings at all that way. And it's almost like his history becomes almost like a joke. That really started to piss me off. So there was large sections of that I skipped. The only character ending that pissed me off, but in a different way, the only character ending that was a good ending, I felt like, was the white, straight main male character, which pissed me off in a different direction. not because of how poorly he was handled, but because of how well he was handled when compared to the other two main leads. Like, if everyone's endings had been handled that well, I wouldn't have been as ticked off with his ending as I was. That's just all I'm gonna say on that. So yeah, I do feel like there's some major wasted potential here. This is probably one of the few standalone novels that I will say maybe even would have benefited from being a larger book. Something to explore the characters more. Especially on a character-driven story. I get that the author probably was trying to keep within a certain page count, so that can make things a little messy, especially when you have characters but you also have a plot you've got to push along within a very set time. So I don't know. Or maybe it was all in the editing process. I mean, I don't know what the author's drafts looked like, of course, I mean, we only got the published book, but, maybe in the editing process, something got missed and cut out that shouldn't have maybe been cut out, that did touch on some of those subjects. But here nor there, that doesn't really matter. This is the book we got. So yeah, it was 1.5 stars for me, and it was I only gave it the extra half star because it kept me vested enough that I did not DNF it. And the characters I did like for the most part, even though I had my problems with them. I liked them for the most part, and I wanted to see how their stories ended. I was vested enough. I wanted to see these characters get their endings. And yeah, so that is all I really have to say on that. So yeah, I'm going into Gothicana, and this is a gothic dark romance, so I do expect there to be probably some trigger warnings in the book or on the author's website. We'll have to see what it actually reads out as. And that's where I'm going to end this clip, and I will see you guys in the next one when I have got some read in this. Okay, so we are about 10 after 3 in the afternoon. I am on 10 after 3. I am just reached page 200 on Gothicana, and oh my gosh, this definitely leans more toward gothic than romance. In gothic romance, yes, there is a bit of a forbidden romance going on. There is some really good spice, but there is also like this creep factor in here that I'm not sure if it's ghosts. I'm not sure if the main female character, Corvina, is psychic or if she's just going crazy. She thinks she's going crazy. So yeah, if you like, a darker romance or gothic aesthetic, this book is definitely probably for you. It's, like I said, it leans kind of more into that gothic or atmospheric horror kind of genre than in the romance side of things. But yeah, and I'm also just gonna take a moment here to appreciate this book's versions of, like, each chapter is filled with like these photos or drawings. I think they're photos, actually. They look, could be really realistic drawings, but that have like these quotes from like gothic literature and and other quotes that kind of theme the chapter that they're leading into, and they are absolutely stunning. I love it when books have artwork like that. So yeah, I'm enjoying this a lot more than I thought I would. I was expecting something like a gothic romance, but I was expecting, like, usually a lot of like gothic books that I've read don't really lean into the gothic aesthetic. They use it as more like a theming or a backdrop to like the romance. This is definitely like the gothic atmosphere first, and you in this school, this former castle that is been turned into a university, and you know the romance is kind of second to that, which I'm really appreciating. I am so stoked to finish this off. I've got just a little less than half left, so I'm gonna turn off the camera and I'm gonna get back into reading this, and I think this is probably gonna be a 5-star read for me. Thinking. We'll see how it ends. But yeah, that's it for this update. I will see you guys in the next one. Okay, what are we? We are about 20 after 8 p.m. I am just about finished with Gothicana. I've really, really enjoyed this novel. It's very atmospheric. Yes, it's spicy. It's got a good kind of plot about, you know, family secrets and just like all that good gothic story kind of stuff. So yes, I am going to finish it off tonight for sure. This will probably be my last clip of the night, because I think after this I'm probably going to go lay in bed, and I'm going to pick up Villain by Chani Lynn Feiner. That is, that one's on my Kindle, so I can read that one in the dark. And that's pretty much it for now. So, yeah, I guess my next clip will be in the morning, and I will see you guys then. Bye. Hello. Okay, so we are about 2:30 in the afternoon on Sunday, December 29th. I have read half of Villain by Chani Lynn Feiner. I am really enjoying this one, as I have enjoyed all of her books so far. But I will say that this series in particular, even though it is a standalone, there are some crossover characters and a few things that actually happen in her Devils of Vitality series that is referenced. So unless you've read at least the first book of the Devils of Vitality, which kind of sets up her universe, sets up some of these characters, the political world, that kind of thing, I think you would struggle with this Villain trilogy. And it is a trilogy, which I just found out, which I'm really excited for, because now I have 2 more books with these characters. But yeah, and so yeah, I am really enjoying it, and that's all I'm going to say to that. I actually think I'm going to end the reading vlog here, just because I am starting to find that my mind is starting to wander. I'm having a harder time starting to concentrate on my dogs just ran down with a toy with reading. So I think, so I don't end up in a reading slump, I am just going to end my reading there. I may come back to it later on tonight. I would definitely like to finish it, you know, by the end of the month. So that gives me a couple of days. I'm just not going to vlog it. So for this year, this is it. Everybody have a happy new year, and I will see you guys next year. Bye.